Welcome to the second episode of Tales from a Retro Gamer. Today I'm going to be talking about one of the most influential games of my gaming history, Breakout, the 1976 Atari game. And I'm also going to be talking about how I learned to basically start playing for video games for free in the arcades. How I kind of got around the whole you had to have money to play games. So starting off, Breakout. So it was 1976, like I had mentioned in episode 1. I really got into gaming with Atari Pong and with Gunfight and Pong in the arcades. Well, in 1976, my brother and I were going to arcades a lot. Putt-putt golfing games, Malibu Grand Prix, Land of Oz are the arcades I grew up in. Plus, we would find arcade games at 7-Elevens, bowling alleys, skating rinks, places like that. Just anywhere there were arcade games, we loved to go. And so Breakout. One day we walked into this arcade, which was very pinball heavy, as arcades were in the mid to late 70s. Lots of pinball machines, rows and rows of them. Well, one day we walked in, and among the pinball machines and a handful of other games, there was Breakout. It stood there like the monolith in 2001: A Space Odyssey. Really impressive looking, really cool. And it looked kind of familiar because I walked up to it and it had a paddle controller like the analog controller for Pong. And I thought, well, that looks familiar, interesting. But on the screen, there's rows of bricks, colored bricks. And instead of avoiding ball to miss high score, like in Pong, you rebounded the bouncing ball, up into rows of bricks to make them disappear. And we would see that theme, years later and on and on and on with Space Invaders, with Tetris, with Arkanoid, that basic thing. Apparently that appeals to some primal need in humanity to make things disappear from the screen because those kind of games are super popular. And so the problem was I really, really liked this game a lot. And I pumped several quarters into it and then ran out of money. I was like, okay, this is not good. Because with pinball, my brother and I got really good at pinball. We could make games last a really long time. And we mastered several games and we could play them for a really long time. Pop games, so we could maybe put one quarter in and play for an hour on the single machine because you're popping games, you're making the games last a long time. That wasn't really the case with video games. First of all, they were new, we weren't good at them yet, and most of them were designed to last a few minutes, maybe a few seconds. And so Breakout, I could play a little bit, but then I'd have to put another quarter in. Not like pinball, suddenly I had a problem. Okay, so when my brother and I would go to the arcades, we would typically have maybe 50 cents or $1 in our pockets. Now we had a great home life, we had a nice house, 2 cars, my dad had a great job, excellent meals, the whole works. Nice Christmases and birthdays, nice furniture, the whole thing, good clothes. But my dad wanted to teach us the value of $1, plus he was very frugal. So we would get maybe $1 a week for allowance around this time. Around the late 70s, we were getting about $1 a week for allowance. Obviously, that's not going to get you far in an arcade, especially with video games. And so we would walk in with a little bit of money, 50 cents, $1. We would also have a little extra money from when I would go ride our bikes. We would find recyclable bottles. In the 70s, you could find bottles that people would throw out the window. Littering was super common. You would see people throwing out their fast food out the window with people not thinking a whole lot of it. Bottles were thrown out on the side. Well, in one way, this was beneficial for us. We would find these recyclable bottles and we would gather them up we'd go on our bicycles, gather them up, take them to the convenience stores, and they would give you like a nickel or 3 cents or something for these bottles. And so, you got enough bottles, you'd have enough for another game or two. Okay, so we'd show up in the arcade with $1 at the most, maybe $1.50, maybe 50 cents on if it was times were particularly lean. And so we'd walk in. So what are we going to do? We don't have much money, but we want to play a bunch of video games. We're stuck. So we figured out there were 2 pinball machines we had totally mastered. Hot Hand and Dolly Parton. These were really fun machines and we just really got into playing them. Well, we figured out they were pretty easy too, and we got to be really good at aiming. My brother in particular was a pinball wizard. He could walk into any arcade, they'd wheel in a brand new machine, set it up, boom, he could pop a game first chance he got. Xenon is one in particular, a really futuristic machine from around 79 or 80, something like that. And it was this really cool machine. I played it, I lost. He played it, first game, boom, like a gunfighter at the OK Corral. He just, boom, he hit it, mastered it. He was immediately great at it. And so what we did with Hot Hand and Dolly Parton, we played those machines. We put one quarter in those machines and we could both pop several games with one quarter. and we would, you know, beat the high score or light special, and we would pop extra games. And so, you know, we might get 5, 6, 7, 8 games with 1/4. And so what we would do, we would sell off those games, 2 for a quarter or a token, depending on the arcade, to, you know, just people walking by, and you say, hey, you want 2 games for a quarter, or you want 4 games for 50 cents or whatever. And so we would sell that to make a little extra money. Then we could go play the arcade games. And this got really important when Space Invaders hit, because we absolutely loved Space Invaders and Donkey Kong, Frogger. All these machines started coming out when we needed more and more quarters. So we would play pinball, pop games, sell those games, 2 for a quarter a token, and boom, we had enough money to play the video games. And so that leads me to another way that, or actually we had 2 or 3 more ways that we would make extra money to play these games. So once again, we show up in the arcade with 50 cents or $1. Another thing we would do, we would go around to each machine, and the little coin slots on the pinball machines, we would push the button hoping for quarters and tokens to pop out, and they would. Maybe every 9th or 10th machine we would go to would deposit, you know, like a token or a quarter, depending on the machine we're at. And sometimes there would be several stuck. You could even see them through the slot. We kind of bang on the little dispenser and or on the coin slot thing, and then coins would trickle out through the little coin slot, so we'd have extras. And so also we would just walk around looking at the screens. You would find random credits on machines. Sometimes maybe a little kid would put a token in a machine and not really know what he was doing and walk off. Sometimes a parent or a kid would pop a game on a pinball machine and not know they had done it, so we would find extra credits. So just finding games, that was one way. Because like I said, we'd have several hours, so we'd just be there all day, and we would find games. Sometimes I'd find an occasional token or something under a machine. Sometimes I would find one on top of the machine where people would play the reserves game, and maybe they'd left one up there. And now there was another way that we would play free games, and so what I've mentioned so far was reputable, above board. There was another way we would play free games that got a little gray area. So if we were playing a pinball game and the ball didn't do what we thought it should do, like maybe it popped out the side when we thought it shouldn't have, we would tell the operator the machine was defective and he'd give us a token. Or if a video game, like we got a cheap death in a video game, we would tell the arcade operator. And now this worked really well with places that had tokens, because they would just give you a token. They didn't care. They were just going to get it back, and they weren't technically losing money. When it was a quarter, what they would do, they would open the little cabinet and push the button to put an extra credit on the machine. So we fibbed a little, I suppose, but anyway, we were poor, sort of, and we had to find, you know, we were so obsessed with pinball and video games, we had to find ways to play, even though we would walk into an arcade with not necessarily enough money to stay there, but somehow we ended up staying there all day. So here's, for a future episode, what I'm going to do. I'm going to tell you guys a particularly interesting way that we made money at the Land of Oz arcade at the Northeast Mall in Hearst, which is a suburb of Fort Worth. They ran a special, 5 tokens for $1 or something like that. Anyway, I'm going to save that for a future episode. There's a way that we actually made a lot of money selling tokens to customers, but I'll tell you that in another episode. I've also got an episode coming up talking about when I got ColecoVision for Christmas, and there's going to be another episode. My 2 best friends each had a Fairchild Channel F in 1976 when they came out. But those are stories for another time. Once again, thank you for watching. Thank you for subscribing. Subscribers are awesome. Viewers are awesome. I appreciate all of you. Thank you. Peace out.